facts of the situation are that the vehicle was weaponized and it attacked the law enforcement officer. He defended himself and he defended those individuals around him. That is the definition. When there is something that is weaponized to use against the public and law enforcement, that is an act of domestic terrorism. It happened in our shores. It happened here in our country. You don't get to change the facts just because you don't like them. We will continue to look at this individual and what her motivations were. We know that there was, throughout that morning, she had harassed and impeded law enforcement operations. That raises the suspicion level with all of these law enforcement officers as far as paying attention to what her capacity is. And as you see on the videos, and they've proven out, that this law enforcement officer took the action that his training prepared him for, and he worked to make sure that he could save his own life and those around him.
How aware do you think Renee Good was of that approach? Do you think she's aware of the training of officers? Do you think she realized she was in that much danger?
I believe that's an interesting question, because I'm not sure what's going through the mind of these individuals. I think that a lot of them are under the illusion that because they have gotten away with things for so long, that they're able to push law enforcement further and further away and eventually intimidate them enough to where they just won't show up to do this job. But these officers, they're going to show up to do the job.
Isn't that part of a consideration when planning an operation? Sorry to interrupt, Jonathan, but yeah, when you're setting out the mission, is part of the planning to think, okay, our benefit is that we take these dangerous people off the streets, but the cost could be the loss of innocent life. How much is that factored into the sort of health and safety protocol of the mission, if you like?
Well, we would just look at that as a contingency. We don't look at it as a health and safety. We look at it as a contingency factor of doing the mission. So do they set out to shoot every protester that's out there? Absolutely not. But when the protesters, even protesters who come out there and obstruct justice, and this has happened over and over again where officers have let people go, but they didn't attempt to flee from law enforcement. They sat there, and many times they cried or they put on an act, and law enforcement just tells them, or ICE tells them, to get out of here, just go home. In this case, the protesters continued to argue back and forth, and then as the officer moved back to around to the side when they initiated the arrest, she gunned it. So these are contingency plans that we come up with. The mission is to arrest this individual, this particular illegal alien. And so as they plan that these protesters may be out there, especially with the app and everything that's telling people where to go. And so they plan for where they let them go or where they don't. And in this case, what occurred was they continued to push the fact continued to push the obstruction to a point where when they went to initiate the arrest, which they were in their legal right to do, she reacted in a way that she was going to flee. And an officer just happened to be crossing in front of the vehicle. And when they told her to stop, she didn't. And so that is in our training.
Jonathan, do you think the key difference is that these are not protesters organizing a planned march along a set route in conjunction with authorities? These are people protesting in the middle of an operation where officers have to worry about the threat to their life.
These people are planning. These people are planning. We can see this. And I'm saying this from an investigative standpoint. You know, I lived in New York. That's where I was in the FBI. These meetings of the Marxists and communists, they happen all the time. Many of these people belong to these groups, but many of them don't. But the organizers put on these types of meetings and they cultivate these people. Then they go out and recruit people either through paid actors or actually recruiting them and grooming them to have these beliefs. And so what they end up doing is shipping these people all over the place, and they become professional protesters for leftist ideology. And so this is organized. That's why you see the tactics all over the place that are the same. You see the same people go from city to city because these things are organized. And, you know, I'll harken back to a friend of mine who used to be in Delta Force, and he was protecting an individual. I believe the guy's name was Milo, who was kind of an alt-right speaker back several years ago. And they were at Berkeley University. And there was a huge protest because they didn't want him to be there. The guy that I know that was protecting him went up on the roof to look down and see what the crowds were like. And the tactics that he saw scared him. This is a guy from Delta Force. He said because they were so organized and not of the United States military. These people and the tactics that they are using, they are so organized and so well trained in many areas that they are able to carry out these types of operations using propaganda, using blocking forces, and trying to instigate law enforcement into doing things like this, where they have to defend themselves. So I would say that these are organized, and that is the one criticism I do have of law enforcement, is that they need to realize this and they need to investigate these groups, because it's no different than the attacks you had in Australia, where people may swear allegiance to an ideology, get some training, but then they'll come out and carry out these attacks. You have to investigate these groups. You have to look into them and see who it is that's organizing these, who's funding them, who's training, and break those groups down.
Okay, that's really interesting analysis, and it does sound like, sadly, we may see more conflict in the days and weeks ahead. Let's hope not. Jonathan Gilliam, really appreciate you joining us on Sky News this morning. He's a former US Navy SEAL and FBI special agent. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.